like be a little bit farther back. I think your face might be a little close. Yeah.
Better?
Yeah, yeah. And then just like angle it a little bit. Yeah. Maybe like a tiny, tiny bit closer. But yeah. Yeah, it was just a little bit too close before. But cool. All right, you sound good on my end. Do I sound good on your end, Matt?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, cool. Welcome back to Yield Today with Dallin Candland. I'm here with Matt Maroon. He is the department chair at BYU Idaho for marketing, and I took his social media marketing class back in the day, and just excited to talk with him about trusting your journey, going for big moves, and all this other good stuff. So thanks for coming on, Matt.
Yeah, no, appreciate you having me. It's fun to reconnect and see a post BYU Idaho.
Yeah, it's been a journey for sure. A little bit of bumps in the road, but learning a lot for sure. So I'm really thankful to have you on. Tell us a little bit about like trusting big moves and how have you learned from people maybe that took those risks that really paid off and how that's like maybe inspired you with your life and how you live your life.
Yeah, I think early on I kind of had to similar bumps, I guess, that you kind of referenced earlier or whatever. I actually remember, believe it or not, the summer before my senior year when I was about to go back to BYU Idaho, and I was supposed to have this internship, and it just kind of it was through my mom, and it wasn't really kind of like happening, and so I spent a good chunk of the summer like not doing anything and just feeling kind of like I was just kind of wasting time and energy. I mean, I was having fun. I was golfing and riding dirt bikes and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's like, man, I'm not like a contributing member to society. And then by the time the internship kind of came around, I had to go back to school, and I just felt like I wasted an entire summer, right? And it was kind of a bum deal because I needed that internship to graduate, and I didn't really have anything else lined up, and so fast forward a couple semesters later, I still need an internship. Now I'm getting ready to graduate. I have a professor who mentions this opportunity of interning for the Nielsen Company out in New York City. And I was like, well, I don't have anything else going on. I can just apply and see what happens. I grew up under the impression that New York City was like this dirty, my dad called it a cesspool, just a place I never wanted to lay foot in. And so I had no ambition to going to New York, but it was kind of like an opportunity. I interviewed for it, ended up getting an offer, and that was a real kind of act of faith because I didn't know anybody out there. I didn't have any connections. I was single at the time, so I was a little concerned about, hey, what's the dating scene out there? But long story short, I really feel like it was one of those things where kind of the Lord opened a door, and I was willing to kind of step through it. I think sometimes we have those doors opened, and maybe we step through, maybe we don't. But I've learned, I think that was one of the first, and I've had several since then, but one of the first experiences that I saw where when the doors open, whether you like it or not, sometimes you just need to step through it. And in that case, it completely changed my life. Moved to New York, had a great experience with my internship, had a full time job, ended up meeting my wife out there, ended up having our first two kids out there. Really just kind of launched both my career and my, I don't know, just kind of like my life kind of in a different trajectory than what I expected. I think I probably expected to just move home to Washington and just kind of do whatever, but it really did kind of change everything for me. And I think it's just from having that faith of just kind of stepping through that door.
Wow, so it sounds like this is a move that really like didn't just fill you like or help you financially, it also filled you spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and then filling out all these other parts of the puzzle maybe you weren't even thinking about.
Totally, yeah, yeah. It's the old idea of like you don't know what you don't know, and I had no idea that New York would be so good for me. Like you said, it's at so many different levels, right? When I first moved out there, they actually had just and the temple was just being dedicated, and so I had an opportunity to be like a full time temple worker, which honestly, like it was an amazing experience living in New York. sometimes I wonder if it wasn't for the temple, I probably not wouldn't have really made it through New York the way I did, because there's a lot of there's a lot of other things going on there that aren't super awesome if you're a covenant keeping member of the church or whatever. And so yeah, I just had an opportunity to grow and develop in so many different ways. And like I said, you don't know what you don't know, and that was an experience, a multitude of experiences that really kind of made me become something greater than anything I'd ever anticipated for myself.
Wow. Yeah, there's so much there. And, I got to visit Vegas back in May and, I kind of had heard a lot of different things. And then when I got there, I was surprised to be like, how inspired and how spiritually uplifted I was there. But it was because of what I was focusing on. I was just focusing on, enjoying it, meeting people, feeling the vibe, and then like, going super deep on just my writing and the other things I was doing there, and then having as good a time as I could at my friends, wedding reception and the other things that were part of the trip, and kind of having an idea of like, these are what I'm doing on the trip. Like I planned it out. It's like I'm not getting distracted. I'm not getting in another place, going to
Yeah.
swim in the morning. I'm going to go on this walk, and that really helped me get distracted. And I think the temple or anything like that, having that kind of place you can go and volunteer or help out, whatever you're doing, that can really help you to refine your focus over time, which will bless you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's just being intentional with where you are, right? Kind of in your present state and being intentional. Like, hey, I'm trying to develop in this area, and so these are the X, Y, and Z things I'm doing for that. And so yeah, I like that example there of just kind of being intentional about having a good time, just enjoying the moment.
Yeah, yeah, that's 100% something I've been learning so much about is like, I was looking at this like page I wrote pretty recently of like, these are some of the biggest blessings of my life back in January. And I look at my life now in August, it's like, well, that's when I was in Utah. So most of those blessings don't even apply anymore. They still are there and they still kind of exist to a certain degree, but they're not in my face all the time. So it really does come down to appreciating and, kind of vibing with the present moment. Because like at one point maybe you'll be like really here in finances or whatever, but it's like you have control over a lot of those other like outcomes, a lot of those other things going on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm inspired with just talking with you already. I'm already learning things. So tell us a little bit more about Matt's growing up and how like what you wanted to do and how you eventually got to Microsoft.
Sure, yeah. So I guess we all kind of have our story, we all kind of have our path, and we probably all think it's very unique in some regard, and maybe it's not, maybe it is. But I think for me, growing up, I didn't grow up necessarily as a member of the church. I My mom was an inactive member, and then my dad was a non-member, and so she knew enough to get us kids baptized when we were 8, and she even got us baby blessings when we were born. So I was that kid who, who the missionaries would come teach as an 8-year-old, come to church 2 times or whatever it was, get baptized, never come back again. And that was, sometimes, I know when I was a missionary, I kind of feel like, man, should we have even spent the time or whatever? Was that just kind of, I don't know, was that appropriate? In my case, though, it absolutely was because the missionaries had taught me to pray, and so even though I wasn't going to church for years, I wasn't going to church. I was saying nightly prayers, and I was developing a relationship with God that I think was very impactful. And so when I was 15, a lot of my friends at the time, I was a sophomore in high school. A lot of my friends were getting into stuff that I just wasn't really into, and I didn't want to really participate in. So I was like, man, I need some new friends. And so I kind of cut this deal with God, which I'm not sure if you're supposed to do that or not, but it worked at the time. But I basically was like, hey, like if you give me new friends, like I'll go back to church if you get me new friends. Was kind of my deal with God, and I felt pretty good about it. And long story short, went back to church, had an awesome group of friends. We all had similar interests. They all served missions. I ended up serving a mission, and that was pretty powerful. I think kind of getting over to New York, and then Microsoft and all that fun stuff. I think there was just kind of like this. kind of this distilling of experiences that I had over time that allowed me to kind of build my faith to the point where I could move to New York, and I could, feel faith. I could have the faith that things would work out, even though I didn't. Things hadn't necessarily kind of gone the way I'd expected them to. I've been working in New York for about 6.5 years or so at the Nielsen Company, and just felt like I wanted to be more challenged. I just wanted to learn some new stuff. I felt like I'd kind of just gotten to the point where I wasn't learning a lot of new stuff, and had always admired Microsoft. Always wanted to work there, but I'd even applied a few times, but never heard anything. But I just had a friend who kind of who I used to work with at Nielsen, who reached out asking if I wanted to work at Microsoft, and I was like, yeah, that'd be amazing. And so that night she put me in touch with a recruiter and went through all that process, and ended up getting a job. I think one of the interesting things about that though is I was literally at the point where I was just like, I really can't do what I'm doing at Nielsen anymore. I'm not really sure what to do. I was already looking to reset. In fact, I was taking GMAT courses. I was looking to. I already had a master's degree, but I was like, maybe I should go get an MBA at BYU because I can then network and then kind of hit the reset button on my career. And honestly, it was kind of, again, it was one of those situations. You don't know what you don't know. The Lord had a plan already. I was able to get this job at Microsoft. My goal was like, the whole reason for going to get an MBA was like, hey, I'd love to work in tech, right? That's like my dream job. I'd love to go work for a tech company. And the Lord was just kind of like, hey, you know what? Like I got a plan, right? We can do that. You don't have to waste the time or the money, or the time and money lost, by getting another degree. We can do that right now, and that was a massive blessing. And even while I was at Microsoft, I had other opportunities that presented themselves that just really enabled me to have an incredible career. Over the 6 or 7 years I was there.
That's amazing. Yeah. There's definitely like that like common thread, I guess, sometimes, like in some of our stories where it's like we can tell God something, be like, hey, this is kind of what I want to do. And it's kind of like, prayers where our interest and God's interest can really like align and be like on the same page. And then we can be like, okay, now we're kind of going in a good path. And I felt that like basically every single day when I was a missionary, when I was a full-time missionary, and sometimes after the mission and before, there's times where it wasn't really there, but it is beautiful when you feel like that is at least somewhat on track. And you're not
Right.
always going to feel like that, but it's cool when you get those little realizations or these moments of like, okay, yeah, we're still figuring things out. We're still good.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's kind of like what life's all about. Like I think in the mission, for those who've served, it's like yeah, you get a little bit of that every day. Not that every day is amazingly spiritual, but you feel like you're going somewhere or you're developing. And I think when you get home, at least for me, and you don't necessarily have that kind of baked into your day, right? Like now, your day might consist of all these things that aren't necessarily intentional on building your own spirituality, building your relationship with Christ or whatever. But that doesn't mean it can't happen, right? And I think it is when you do allow yourself to allow that into your life, to be intentional around, hey, this is how I'm going to build this. This is how I'm going to try to get better. You can just continue to grow, and that's what's amazing to me. I turned 44 this year, and it's like there's so much I'm still learning, and there's so much that I'm excited to learn, and it's just amazing that you never really kind of get to that point of like, okay, I'm in a good place. I think there's just always kind of that that opportunity to kind of just keep going, which I think is incredible.
Yeah, progression is such a big part of it. And, it reminds me of like what you were talking about earlier about, just kind of taking those little steps and how there was somebody already in Microsoft that was able to help you and that was able to kind of accelerate that progress tremendously. I think this concept really started to hit home with me. I was probably like 17 or 18 and I heard this concept of like you could pay $50 to have this guy who's studied YouTube videos and stuff about basketball to teach you basketball, or pay $5,000 to have Michael Jordan, Steph Curry. Like that was, you'll get it's the same amount of time, but
Right.
the amount of impact you have is going to be different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, transitioning to BYU Idaho. Is that another like, okay, Microsoft has been really great. I'm kind of getting this pull. It was like that kind of experience again.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So somewhat similar. But just with its own set of challenges, I guess. So I'd been at Microsoft for a couple of years, and well, and I'll back up a little bit. So after being at Microsoft for a couple of years, I kind of got to a point where I just felt like maybe Microsoft wasn't the place for me. I was in an organization where I had some leadership, so not my boss, but like my boss's boss. That was a little kind of, I don't know, clicky, kind of had his people, and his people were the ones who were like going out partying all night, like literally until like 2 or 3 a.m. Like during the week. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Uh, Obviously, I'm not going to do that, and even if I tried to like just hang out with them, obviously not doing the partying stuff, but just hang out or whatever it is, just a team bond. I'm done by like 10, right? Like I gotta get to bed. So anyway, I felt like I was kind of being passed over for opportunities, and I kind of felt maybe I was being stonewalled a little bit. That I didn't really have opportunities for progression. And I clearly, I talked to my wife about it. I was praying about it, and another opportunity kind of presented itself where Microsoft had this competition, and I thought to myself like, hey, if I can do well in this competition, it can at least like give me exposure to people who are outside of my organization, and maybe I can move. And so, long story short, that worked out, and the inspiration came in a really funny way, like writing this song that was kind of like a parody of an old Adam Sandler song. Not typical what you consider inspiration, like, but I truly believe it was, and it did everything I needed it to do. Where I was able to kind of do well, and kind of network in and make these most of that opportunity, and that opportunity is what moved me to Chicago. And in Chicago, my career just flourished. Like it was on rocket fuel. Like I had all these opportunities to network, to grow, to move into new different roles. I think I had um, 3 or 4 different roles just in my 4 years living in Chicago. And I was kind of on this fast track now of progression and career amplification and all these things that one could want. And I remember having this distinct impression at one point. I think I was literally just kind of like getting leaving my bedroom for the day, kind of getting ready for the day, and the impression was like you're going to be asked to make a sacrifice when it hurts the most. And I was like, okay, all right, cool, I can do that. Like whatever. And just didn't think much of it after that. Continued to do well in my career, continued to get promotions and all these other things. And fast forward about a year or two, and I had just gotten like the promotion that I was really kind of had been working for years. I was overseeing this group of people in the Midwest and over in Seattle. I had this really awesome dynamic team, really amazing boss and organization that was just doing cool stuff. Right, we were doing the cool stuff, and the org was gave us everything we wanted because they loved what we were doing. And right after I had been given that role, I was also extended an opportunity to teach at BYU Idaho, and I was kind of like, okay, this must be that sacrifice or whatever whatever that impression was. I can't remember if it was a year or two before, but shoot, okay, this is it. And it wasn't a hard decision because I knew it was the right decision, but it was kind of a little disappointing, right? Because it's just like, oh, finally, things have all kind of like fallen in place, and this is what I've been working toward for so long. And then I had to go sell my wife, right, on this idea of moving to Rexburg. After she'd been there right beside me, kind of going through all the kind of the pain and anguish, finally getting to this position. Is like, really, like now you want to go do this in Idaho, like. And long story short, we both ultimately felt really good about the decision, even though there was a part of us that didn't want to feel good about the decision. We probably would have preferred to just kind of kept doing what we were doing because things were going so well. But in hindsight, moving to Rexford has been a tremendous blessing, and we've had so many great experiences and opportunities to do even greater things than maybe we would have, had we stayed in Chicago. And so again, I think it is just kind of that, the Lord's going to open doors, and sometimes we need to be willing to step through them. Sometimes it's going to be hard to step through them, and it might be for different reasons. Maybe we're scared, we're unfamiliar, or we're just maybe a little selfish and just like, hey, I don't want to reduce my earning potential by that much or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and it's been 6 years since you made that sacrifice, and the fruits are continuing to pay off. If you hadn't taken the job when you did, maybe there would have been students you wouldn't have come in contact with, and it really is interesting how important it is to walk through that door early. And this is something I've learned is that sometimes that door is open for a decent long period of time, but the
Yeah,
longer you wait, sometimes the harder it is to get in at that point. And
yeah,
not only that, you're also missing out on these blessings that were here. So it's sort of like a
totally.
wave. Like the wave is like highest, and it's like that's really hard time, but it's like it's open for you. It's gonna be really difficult. But then as it crashes, if you wait way too long, you might still get in, but there's barely a splash at that point. Whereas if
Yeah,
you go in when you did, you get the whole tidal wave. You get all of that, and there's so much joy that I think overflows your life when you are able to do that. There's definitely been times I've been able to do that. There's times where I've been really lazy and waited and been like, haha, that's funny. There's no way that's just my thoughts. And,
yep,
you can rationalize, you can do whatever we want. God is not going to force us to do anything. But it really is beautiful when we can trust that preparation and the cycle he's taken us through and be like, oh yeah, a year ago or 2 years ago, God kind of gave me some kind of thing, and He has the writing all over the wall. I've been trying to keep track of the writing on the wall. It's there. I need to just go for it and
yeah,
trust that He will provide literally every single thing,
yeah.
just kind of like He did in New York for you. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing that as you're talking, that I think is interesting too, is that when I had that impression, like, hey, you're going to be asked to make a sacrifice when it hurts the most or whatever. That wasn't something that I kept to myself. That was something that I had shared with my wife, and and I think there's an element of just being willing to share some of those experiences with others that creates an accountability and also just kind of reinforces how powerful maybe that impression was, or whatever the case may be. Because when I did mention it to her, she knew, that I'd had that impression a year ago. I didn't even have to bring it up. She had kind of said, like, "Do you think this is the thing?" I was like, "Maybe, probably. I don't know. You got to figure it out. Let's go to the temple." And I think there's something powerful about just kind of sharing those experiences as well with others. That also God God somehow respects. I feel like.
Yeah, that's cool. That is something I've learned for sure, and I'm continuing to learn it, how important it is. Like if I'm having some kind of feeling or some kind of vibe about something, because I'll go and talk to anybody. And so there's been times with me and my brother, we're out and about, or me and my brother and my sister, and I'll just leave and I'll go and talk to a random person, and they're like, "Where the heck did Dallin go?" Now I'm getting better at being like, "Hey, I feel like I need to go talk to that guy, so I'm just gonna go talk to him, and I'm gone. It's important to be on the same page in that way because then it helps with the connection. It helps with keeping that secure instead of like the overthinking, the what is going on kind of thing. And it helps to just be on the same page about that because then you can understand like the truth of the matter. Like for me, you see that all throughout scripture. It's like, God says like, do not fear. And then he says it another time, do not fear. And like, do not fear, kind of thing. And so it's like having that message multiple times is really helpful. And so having somebody that you've shared that with can really help later down the road for strength as opposed to like holding on to this precious thing. I think it is important to treat those things precious, not share it super widely, but I
Right.
think, when you feel like you need to share it, sharing it because that can help create that accountability in that team partner person.
Yeah, yeah, yep. I think you nailed it, and yeah, I think it is important to those that's kind of casting pearls before swine. You do want to be kind of it's not that you're sharing it with everyone, but I think it is good to share with those who are closest to you, especially these big things that impact so much or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, break down a little bit some of your favorite parts of working at BYU Idaho, because I know you've had a couple roles there helping out with IBC. That's where I got my first interactions with you, and then I took the social media marketing class. And then, yeah, I guess any tips or anything else you'd share, and I guess how we can get in contact with you.
Sure. Yeah. So I think for me, the greatest thing for me working at BYU Idaho is the relationships I've built with students. Right. It's funny. Like some of my best friends are students, and it's just kind of a weird thing. But like I still have text threads and fantasy football leagues and other things with students that I look at like my friends in Chicago. I look at my friends in New York and while I probably think we're closer friends than we are, I'm not interacting with them half as much as I am with some former students, and that has been such a blessing for me. Maybe they're just being nice to me and entertaining the old guy or whatever. But it's just been such a blessing for me to kind of build those relationships and kind of be a part of their journey as well. Because I just feel like the journey that I had you know, was not anything I had ever expected. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to come to BYU Idaho is to kind of share that and potentially inspire people to realize, hey, there's so much out there for you if you want it. And I can just, tell you that I did, if I could do it, you could do it kind of a thing. So that's the thing that I love about just working for the university, having building those relationships. I think we've got a lot of interesting things kind of going on. Obviously, with the new president coming, all of us in the College of Business and Communication are really excited because he's a business guy, and so we're always trying to be innovative with programs like IBC, and really trying to prepare students and kind of get them to a place that they're more kind of day one ready for the real world versus just a typical graduate who took some classes or whatever. And so I'm really bullish and optimistic about working with someone who comes from industry and really kind of taking education even further than where we are today, which I think is already pretty progressive. So I think there's some really good energy, some really fun opportunities there, and yeah, and just within our program, I feel like we've just got really good faculty and people whose heart are in the right place, of kind of focusing on the right things and doing the right things, investing in those relationships as opposed to just treating it like a job. Like all of us took massive pay cuts to come and be here, and I think all of us are here not for the money or not for anything else, but to really try to help younger people kind of navigate this crazy world, which is career and life and everything else. So those are the things that really kind of get me excited about every morning. There's plenty of mundane things too that come with any job, but that's definitely why I came. That's why I'm here and why I don't have any plans to go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, you got Drew Eager, who worked at Pizza Hut, helped with the stuffed crust thing. I mean, you have so many hard hitters, Candland, and just people that also have hearts of gold, that definitely I believe God has been preparing for and teaching and guiding and helping so they can pass those beautiful things down to, students so that knowledge can spread more widely. It makes me think of that scripture. I think it's Words of Mormon 1:7 in the Book of Mormon that says, I do this for a wise purpose.
Yeah.
It's like we don't need to know really what's going on. It's so important to just kind of trust and move and see what we can do. And kind of going back to your prayer of like seeing like, okay, this is what I want to do. Does this align? And then going after it full force and yeah, just loving it. That's awesome. And you're a good example of that. You were pretty supportive of the podcast earlier on. I remember you sharing it in class once. Like I listened to this episode, I thought it was cool. And so I think that's a lot of your just vibe and personalities, that you're supportive, and that whenever people talk to you, there's always like, okay, there's a lot he wants to give, there's a lot he has to share, and so I think it's like a virtuous cycle. You give, you share, you build up others, and you always have more to give, and you've been doing that throughout your whole career. So it makes sense that there's a lot of people that are chatting with you. But it's super interesting about the friends thing. But thank you so much for sharing all that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You got it. Yeah, and you can check out Matt Maroon on LinkedIn and reach out to him and hear more about all the things he's doing for BYU Idaho, and just keep up the good work. There's definitely days that are like, man, those are some really special days, and I think there's times I stress myself out way too much, and there really wasn't much to worry about at all. It's like I was there for a reason, I was there for a purpose, I was there for a time and a season, and there was wonderful people like Brother Maroon and others that I could go and talk to whenever. And yeah, just thank you so much for your doing and your selflessness. Did I say that? Just, yeah, but thank you for that and your leadership and your love. I always felt it in your class. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Dallin, and yeah, really cool seeing what you're doing. Congrats on 4 years with the pod. That's amazing. A lot of people don't get half as far, so you're doing some really impressive stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe it's coming together for sure. And it's just kind of taking its sweet time, as all beautiful things take their time and process and everything. And yeah, today marks 4 years as we're doing this, so I don't know when we'll get this out, but it's August 24th, 2023. So couldn't have asked for anything better. So it was super awesome having you on. Thanks so much, Matt.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah, so that was